Are you going to help me with my intro? This week's case is about a young girl who claimed she was an ancient vampire, falling for a much older man who claimed he was a werewolf. So let's get started. Hello everyone, my name is Brandy and it's time for a true crime case, mystery, or paranormal story with one or more of my fabulous felines. Black Phillip was behind me, I don't know where he went. If you are a returning subscriber, welcome back, my feline friends, and a big shout out to my feline fans for helping support this channel, and an apology to both my friends and my fans. I'm really sorry I have been MIA. I have plans to get back on track, so please bear with me. Ironically, I have a list of very interesting cases to cover on this channel, so I'm going to try really hard to work really hard and get like a video or two ahead. So, if my life gets busy again, it won't affect you as my viewers, my fabulous, fabulous viewers. You have been so patient with me, and I do feel awful every time that I'm away for a while. My favorite part is after I publish the video that I get to read your comments and we get to discuss the case together, and I get to see your opinions and everything. So I am going to, get better at this, and I just feel like lately my time has not been my own, and it's been hard, but I am taking my time back. It is now going to be my own again. I did have a viewer ask why I just don't hire someone or hire a couple people to help me do things like research or editing a video or something. So it's not all just me, myself, and I doing this. I would love to do that, but unfortunately I can't afford it. Although my channel is monetized, for most of my videos, because, some of those videos, the content is not viewer or not advertiser friendly, so they will demonetize some of those videos. But once you are monetized, you are paid off of how many views you get, not how many subscribers you have. So my videos get around 200 to 300 views, which, don't get me wrong, is great. I never dreamed I would get that many views in my life. I mean, to remind you, I started this video just for family and friends. I never thought I would be sitting here today doing this for you lovely viewers out there. But the revenue from YouTube really isn't that much when you get views like that. Only when you get like hundreds of thousands of views, that's when the money starts getting good. So total transparency here. When I did my taxes, I got my tax document from YouTube, Google, and it said that for the entire year for 2022, I made $298.17. So we're not even breaking the $500 mark here, which is fine. I didn't ever expect to be monetized either, so I'm not expecting a lot of income from a YouTube channel. I do conceive this as a hobby that I like doing, so being monetized is a plus, but I'm not expecting a lot of money here. So I don't know anyone who would work for me or this channel for, about $25 a month is what that comes out to. It's fine. I never set out to be a full-time YouTuber, so this is why it's just me, myself, and I doing this channel. But I will start putting it higher on my priority list because, like I said, I'm going to take my time back. So thank you for sitting through my rant. We will now get started with the case. Okay, we are going to the year 2006, and we are going to the Canadian town of Medicine Hat, Alberta. Okay. So on April 24th in 2006, an 8-year-old boy went over to his friend's house. They were going to play that day. Well, he knocked on the door and nobody answered the door. So he looked through the window because his friend was expecting him. Now, what he saw through the window was a body laying on the basement floor covered in blood, and that poor little 8-year-old boy ran home to tell his mother. Authorities arrived on the scene, but unfortunately, there was nobody to save. They were already dead. Mark Richardson, Deborah Richardson, and their 8-year-old son Jacob had been killed brutally. By walking through the crime scene, what they discovered was that Deborah had been the first to be killed, and she was stabbed at least a dozen times. Mark had tried to fight his attacker with a screwdriver, but ultimately he was stabbed to death as well. Jacob, the 8-year-old boy, he was upstairs in his room in his bed, and his throat had been slashed. Now, walking around the crime scene and seeing family photographs and talking to the neighbors, they also realized that there was an additional family member that was actually missing, and that was 12-year-old girl named Jasmine. But they didn't find her in the house. They didn't find her body, so they assumed that maybe whoever did this actually kidnapped her and took her with them. So they immediately put out an Amber Alert for Jasmine. Now, authorities started processing this crime scene and searching the house for evidence, and it was while they were in Jasmine's room, they searched her computer, some of her digital devices, and they slowly began to realize that Jasmine probably wasn't kidnapped. And not only that, she was actually becoming the prime suspect for these murders. So let's go back a little bit and learn about Jasmine and her family. So Jasmine Richardson was a mostly happy young girl. You know, her upbringing was pretty typical. You know, she was in a wholesome family environment with her mother, Deborah, her father, Mark, and her little brother, Jacob. Now, her parents were labeled as like the cool parents because they were pretty laid back and pretty much let Jasmine do what she wished within reason, right? Now, when Jasmine became a preteen, when she turned 12 years old, she went through what most kids at that age go through. I mean, I know I went through it too. Is that, you know, she felt more grown up than she was. She wanted more freedom, and when she didn't get it, you know, she just felt that her parents didn't understand her. And they were just unfair, you know? It's just not fair. Stupid parents. Now, during this time, Jasmine had kind of fell into the goth type lifestyle, and she completely embraced it. She embraced it mostly due to the fact that wearing like the dark makeup with the dark eyes and all that stuff, it actually made her look much older than she really was. Jasmine would, you know, start dressing in black and putting on the black makeup. What is your guys' fascination with the camera today? Don't knock it over, Fred. Anyway, Fred, excuse me. Thank you. Anyway, Jasmine would start dressing in black and, you know, wearing the dark makeup and, you know, brood around. And she would start telling everybody that she was actually an ancient vampire. And she would continue this facade, and she actually had an account, a profile on Vampire Freaks, which is a website where people can go and just talk about vampires and other mythical characters. Now, Jasmine was also hanging out with some older kids in the goth group, like high school age kids. And, you know, they thought she was older than she was because of her makeup. And so they started calling the house and asking for her. Well, this got the attention of her parents. It wasn't never stated that she had any romantic relationships with any of these older boys, but it made her parents take more notice and kind of, you know, monitor her behavior a little bit more. So in February of 2006, Jasmine asked her parents if she could go to a punk rock concert with friends, and they allowed her to go. There, she met Jeremy Steinke. Now, Jeremy Steinke was actually a 23-year-old man, but his upbringing wasn't that great. He had been moved around a lot as a kid, so making friends wasn't really easy for him. His mother was an alcoholic, and he had suffered abuse not only from his biological father, but his subsequent two stepfathers as well. Now, his mother was known to go on alcoholic binges and would leave him alone when he was a kid for up to a week before she would return home. That means that, he kind of had to fend for himself, and he didn't know how to do a lot of things, so he would go to school unbathed and in dirty clothes. This caused him to be bullied because, kids are cruel. And then he would end up dropping out of school because he just couldn't take the bullying anymore. Now, Jeremy was an introvert because of all this, and he actually started embracing the goth type lifestyle as well after he dropped out of school. He, of course, liked dressing in black and being brooding, and a lot of people who don't understand that goth lifestyle, they're kind of scared of it. And so he kind of liked that too because people would leave him alone. Jeremy would wear a vial of blood around his neck just to, further shock value. He also stated to his friends in the group that he was a 300-year-old werewolf. Now, the goth circle of friends accepted him. For the first time in his life, he felt accepted, and they didn't question him on the whole werewolf thing. It was just like, okay, whatever. Everybody likes to play their role in things. But he was the oldest in the group. So there were reports that Jeremy probably suffered from, fetal alcohol effects from his mother drinking while she was pregnant with him. So he did not have a fully developed brain due to this, which would explain why he preferred to hang around those younger than him because intellectually they matched his maturity level. On top of all this, Jeremy also did a lot of drugs. So not only to self-medicate, but to escape his chaotic home life. Jeremy had attempted to take his own life by age 21 by hanging himself, but that attempt had failed. So Jasmine and Jeremy, they meet at this punk rock concert, and the two hit it off, right? They were both into the gothic lifestyle and mysticism. She was a vampire, he was a werewolf. And apparently they're just naturally drawn to each other because of that. The two developed a codependent relationship, and they swore they were in love with each other very quickly. Now, many of Jasmine's friends actually questioned the relationship and thought it was weird. Not only was, Jeremy a lot older, but he was saying he was a werewolf. And her friends became more concerned when Jasmine seemed to not only believe that Jeremy was a werewolf, but then she further latched onto this that, well, she's an ancient vampire, so it makes sense. So cut to March of 2006, roughly a month after Jasmine and Jeremy met, and they were kind of, dating. Jasmine's parents had actually found out how old Jeremy actually was. Whoops. They were actually monitoring her online activity, and naturally, like any parent, would freak out when they found out their 12-year-old was dating a 23-year-old. So they grounded Jasmine, they took away her computer, and they forbade the two from seeing each other or having any further contact. Now, Jasmine, being the smart girl she was, still found a way to communicate with Jeremy online through email and through a blog that they kind of shared together. She would actually go to the school library, and that's where she would talk to Jeremy. She'd also get up in the middle of the night around 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., and she would sneak calls to Jeremy while her family was asleep. Now, it was unknown at the time if Jeremy knew actually how old Jasmine was. She did lie about her age on her Vampire Freaks profile. She said she was 15, not 12. But Jeremy was aware she was at least under 18. But again, I'm not trying to stand up for him, but you have to remember that his maturity level wasn't of an actual 23-year-old man. But he wasn't dumb, so he should have known that this was highly illegal. Now, Jasmine's parents decided that they were all going to go to family counseling because she just seemed to be pulling away more and more and just causing more problems. And during these counseling sessions, they did see improvement in Jasmine, and the family did, start getting back to normal. So they started giving Jasmine some computer privileges back. There was also another rock concert coming to town, and Jasmine really wanted to go. So her parents agreed to let her go, but they actually went with her. Now, it wasn't only to supervise her. They explained to her, too, that they were trying to connect with Jasmine and understand, her interests as well, so they can kind of bridge that gap between, the generations and, just try to make her happier. So they were trying. So they agreed they were all going to go to the concert. Now, during the show, her parents lost track of her in the crowd, and they decided to go looking for her. When they finally found her, an hour later, Jasmine was in an alley, and she was making out with Jeremy. Whoops. When, they hollered at her and Jeremy saw her parents, he actually ran away from the scene, and Jasmine was in trouble again. They immediately took Jasmine back home, and she was on lockdown once again. Her computer was taken away, and she was being monitored around the clock, pretty much. Jasmine had gone back to communicating with Jeremy through the library computer at her school, and she started becoming very dark as well. Her social media posts and everything just started getting really dark, and she began having an attitude with anyone of authority, not just her parents, but the teachers at school as well. She had been sent to the school counselor a number of times, and she apparently told the school counselor at one point that she wanted to go into foster care because she didn't like the rules that her parents were putting on her. Now, as far as Jeremy was concerned, he was also upset. He had this online blog that he liked to post to, and he, after he was discovered with her in the alley and she was on lockdown again, he had actually gone online and he posted the following on his blog, quote, "My lover's rents are totally unfair. They say that they don't care, that they don't know what is going on. They just assume. Their throats I want to slit. Finally, there shall be silence. Their blood shall be payment." Unquote. So to say he was upset was an understatement. Authorities are now putting this entire picture together, but they had to continue to gather evidence and interview people. And according to the evidence that they were gathering, they assume there's this older man, he's, grooming this girl, and look what happened. Well, unfortunately, it looked like this whole murder was more Jasmine's idea instead of Jeremy's. So in emails that they were able to grab from her computer between Jasmine and Jeremy, Jasmine had actually told Jeremy her plan. And the plan consisted of basically, we kill my parents and then we get to live together. Jeremy had responded to that email stating that he was receptive to the plan and open to it, but they needed to work out more details. We can't just say we kill your parents and live together. We have to work out the actual details, which apparently they did. So in the next weeks that followed, after she was on lockdown again and secretly communicating with Jeremy, they put together this plan. And Jasmine would actually tell her friends about the plan to kill her parents, but her friends would state that they didn't take her seriously. She was always complaining about her parents and everything, and that, she also kept saying she was an ancient vampire too, so, what do you take serious and what you don't? Now, her friends told the authorities that, she was constantly complaining about her parents because she couldn't see Jeremy, and her friends were actually trying to convince Jasmine that her parents were right, that this relationship with Jeremy was weird, and, of course, they said that this just pissed off Jasmine more because her friends weren't on her side. I mean, I kind of get where her friends are coming from because I remember when I was 17, and I guess she wasn't really a friend, but she was just an acquaintance. And I remember she brought her really old boyfriend to a party one time, and we found out like he was like in his 30s dating a 17-year-old, and we all thought that was weird. I'm not saying 35's old, but 35's old to a 17-year-old, okay? So, I mean, I get where her friends are coming from, because even at that age, I thought that was weird. But anyway, the plan continued regardless. So the night of the plan, the murder plan, Jeremy and some of his friends were at his house watching the movie Natural Born Killers, which was him and Jasmine's favorite movie. Now, this movie is about a couple that is completely infatuated with each other, and they go on a killing spree after killing her parents. So apparently they related to this movie. Now, after watching the movie, both Jeremy and Jasmine apparently just couldn't keep their mouth shut, but Jeremy told his friends that he and his girlfriend were going to be just like the characters in the movie, and said the movie was the best love story of all time, and he's living this out with Jasmine. Jeremy even went so far as to ask 2 of his friends if they wanted to help him kill Jasmine's parents. Both friends declined and thought Jeremy was just talking out of his ass, because they said at the time he was drunk, high, and all hyped up from watching the movie, so they didn't take him seriously either. However, after the friends left Jeremy's house, the plan was going down with or without them. Jeremy got the call from Jasmine, and he headed over to her house. Jeremy arrived at Jasmine's house while the family was sleeping in the early hours of the morning, and Jasmine had told him exactly what window in the basement to break to get inside. Now, while Jeremy was breaking the window and crawling inside, he was making a lot of noise. Deborah, Jasmine's mother, would go down into the basement after waking up to the noise to investigate what was going on. Deborah was confronted by Jeremy, who was wearing a mask and holding a knife. She went to run away and screamed, and Jeremy was able to tackle her and stab her 12 times. Mark, Jasmine's father, hearing his wife's screams for help, would grab a screwdriver, which was the closest thing he had next to him. He ran down in the basement to help his wife. Unfortunately, Jeremy was able to overpower Mark, even though Mark was able to get in a lucky shot and actually gave Jeremy a black eye. But Mark ended up being stabbed over 24 times. 9 of those stab marks were in his back after he had fallen. Jasmine would stand at the top of the stairs and listen to her parents' murder. Then she would go to the upstairs to her little brother Jacob's room. Jasmine at first tried to strangle Jacob, but Jacob was able to break free from her grip. He reportedly grabbed a lightsaber from his toys in an effort to defend himself. Jasmine would then stab Jacob 4 times while he tried to get away, but he crawled into the hallway and he wasn't dead. Now, according to Jasmine's statement, her little brother pleaded with her, saying he didn't want to die. At that point, Jeremy finished up in the basement and had come upstairs to see where Jasmine was at. And he would end up putting Jacob back into his bed and then slashed his throat. Jasmine actually told the authorities that Jacob died in her arms, which is heartbreaking. The couple then fled the scene after taking some money and some valuables. They went to a local restaurant where witnesses said they were laughing and kissing. And then they later went to a house party of some of Jeremy's friends, and they bragged to anyone that would listen how they were now notorious killers. And Jeremy would even tell them how he got the black eye, because he got the black eye trying to kill Jasmine's father. And of course, again, nobody took them seriously. So now that the police had the entire story, they put out an APB for either Jasmine or Jeremy, because both of these individuals were missing. They couldn't find them. Finally, about 2 days later, Jeremy's truck was spotted, and it was 100 miles away from Medicine Hat, Alberta. They were pulled over, and both Jeremy and Jasmine were in the truck, so they were both taken into custody. It was reported that while in custody, before Jeremy and Jasmine were pulled apart, Jeremy proposed to Jasmine, and she said yes, and the two were then engaged. Boy, that's one hell of an engagement story, isn't it? Now, the two were so proud of what they did, and they bragged to so many friends. They talked about it online. Jeremy posted on his blog. I mean, like, really, guys? Really? I mean, they compared themselves to the characters in Natural Born Killers. So, I mean, the evidence was stacked up against them, and it did not look good for either of them. However, once they got to the station and Jasmine was actually pulled away from Jeremy, and she started to realize, the seriousness of this situation, she seemed now to want to cooperate more. And she would actually give back and forth statements. Her story would change a couple times. In the end, Jasmine would end up pleading not guilty. She said that these conversations that she had with Jeremy about killing her parents were hypothetical, that they should have not been taken seriously. But then she would turn around and she stated that she was, so in love with Jeremy that she thought this plan would bring them closer together. Yeah, which is it, Jasmine? Was it hypothetical, or did you think that this would actually bring you guys closer together? Of course, the jury didn't believe Jasmine in her hypothetical conversations, and she did admit to stabbing her brother. She was found guilty for 3 counts of first-degree murder in her trial in 2007. Now, since she was only a minor, she was 12 at the time of the murders, but she was 13 at the time of her sentencing, she got the maximum sentence that they could do for a minor, which was no more than 10 years. So she got credit for serving 18 months in jail, and then she was put in a psychiatric institution for 4 years, and then that was followed up by 4 years of correctional supervision in the community. And then she was out. Free. Jasmine is believed to be the youngest person in Canada to be convicted of multiple murders. Jasmine would later admit that she killed her brother mainly so he wouldn't have to live without his parents. That her and Jeremy did have a conversation about just letting her brother go, but apparently she was convinced that he would be in so much pain without his parents that she didn't want to put him through that. Jeremy's trial took place a year later in 2008. He did plead not guilty, even though he had already confessed many times to the authorities. He was convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder, the same as Jasmine. However, since Jeremy was an adult, his sentence was life in prison, although he would be eligible for parole after serving 25 years. So, we're not done yet. The first year that Jasmine and Jeremy were incarcerated, they would exchange letters with each other, and it was all about promising that, they were still engaged and they were going to get married once they were both out of prison. Within these letters, it was all about them and what they did, but there was no mention of any kind of remorse for what they did. Jasmine had actually stated in one of her letters to Jeremy that the murders had actually turned them into legends, and that they would actually be immortal because people would remember them for all time. I mean, I guess being an ancient vampire and a 300-year-old werewolf wasn't enough to be immortal, but about, year 2 into Jasmine's sentence, she would go through intensive rehabilitation and treatment during her incarceration, and it was revealed that Jasmine was diagnosed with conduct disorder and oppositional defiant disorder. And you've probably heard these before, but just in case you haven't, conduct disorder is given to children that are characterized by a constant pattern of aggressive behaviors and actions. And in some cases, not all of them, but some, they can cause harm to others. For the oppositional defiant disorder, this is something that emerges during childhood and is described as a persistent angry or irritable mood. I mean, it's most teenagers, right? But this goes further because they are unruly, they're argumentative, and they are vindictive. And in frequent cases of oppositional defiant disorder, it manifests in hostility towards any authority figure, which your parents usually get the brunt of that. So in 2016, Jasmine served her time, did her treatment, and she was released at 22 years old. According to the court records, Jasmine actually started showing remorse for her crime, wanted to atone for it, and she has learned through lots of therapy and treatment that she has control over how she behaves, that she can't blame her diagnosis on this type of stuff. They also stated they had a condition in her release that if she was able to stay out of trouble for 5 years, the murders would actually be erased from her record, be expunged from her record, which means that if you were to run a background check on her, you'd never know that she was involved in this. And that happened in 2021. She stayed out of trouble, and now the murders no longer appear on her record. Jasmine would end up attending Mount Royal University. It's unknown if she finished or not. I couldn't find if she actually got a degree or not. Since then, she has changed her name, and she is reportedly just trying to live a quiet life and atone for her crime. As for Jeremy, he's still in prison. He won't be eligible for parole until 2033. He has also changed his name, and he goes by Jackson May now. May is the last name of his mother. He doesn't want his father's last name anymore. It is assumed that Jasmine has cut off all contact with Jeremy. So we could probably assume the engagement was called off. Anyway, I'm hoping so. If she was really rehabilitated, hopefully she does not have any contact with Jeremy. I just don't think that'd be a good idea. So in closing, a lot of people that ask why the parents didn't call the cops when they found out how old Jeremy actually was. I mean, yeah, 12-year-old girl with a 23-year-old man. Yeah, the cops should have been called, honestly. I mean, yeah. Especially if they could have proved that there was any sexual contact going on between the two. But, parents sometimes have to make tough choices, tough decisions. I mean, Jasmine could have been telling them if they called the cops, she would run away or she'd kill herself. We don't know what was going on. And so we can't really judge them in the situation fully because we don't know. Also, as a side note, it was noted that in the court records by the psychiatrists that during Jeremy's trial, they stated that Jasmine was actually the instigator and Jeremy was the weaker one in the relationship. That, due to Jeremy's childhood and maybe fetal alcohol effects, that he was a more willing partner to go along with what Jasmine said. And she was the more dominant side of the relationship. Now, we don't see that a lot. Instead of a grown man convincing a 12-year-old to do something, you have a 12-year-old convincing a 23-year-old man for murder. I mean, it was just interesting. I just ran across it and I found it very interesting. I'm not trying to stand up for him. I'm just saying that it's just very interesting. So what do you think about this case? Should Jasmine be out free like she is with her record expunged so nobody would know of her past crimes? I mean, she was young enough. She can be rehabilitated. Do you believe that she really is? Was it fair that Jeremy got the sentence he did due to his age, even though, his maturity was around Jasmine's age? I don't know what to say here because, I mean, it wasn't like he was disabled and didn't know right from wrong. And I think that's what it comes down to in most cases. If you knew right from wrong, you should have known right from wrong, right? Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for understanding my absence lately. And I will see you guys in the next video, okay? Bye, guys.